So today I'm not going to have a ton of time to share everything I know with you, but I'm going to share some stuff that's actionable at the end of this webinar, okay? So it's time to help you think differently. So we want to start with the foundation of Apple's marketing so I can show you how to think differently. We're going to begin with the mindset, how to be better no matter what, okay? So way back in 1977, when Apple's third founder agreed to join them, he originally was just going to be an investor. But Steve convinced him to join. He wrote up what was called Apple's marketing philosophy. And in it, his goal was to plant a stake that would differentiate Apple and their mindset from everybody else. It was based on what they could do well, and it was based on these three principles. Number one, empathy. Understand our customers' needs better than the others who might be selling to them. Two, have focus. Eliminate all unimportant opportunities from what we're doing. And lastly, only an engineer would love this word, impute. But basically it means people do judge a book by its cover. Therefore, nothing Apple does, whether it's visual or it's inside a product or a book or a package or a software app, nothing should ever be slipshod. Every detail should be considered carefully and designed to create customer and user satisfaction. In 1977, this was radical thinking. At the time, most engineers who run these technology companies thought about competing on a level of parity and doing something just a little bit better than their competitor. They weren't thinking about the human aspect of it. So decades of evolution have happened since then, right? And the philosophy's been put into action. It's been validated by success after success after success, even through recessions and all kinds of setbacks that Apple suffered through. To today. Now, that original philosophy is thought of in terms of principles by people who work at Apple and people who work with Apple or practice that type of thinking. In my mind, however, it's actually evolved beyond principles and it's been institutionalized. So I call them pillars now, holding up and supporting this temple of thought and perspective that has driven Apple's enduring success. So let's break it down and talk about how it's evolved and how we should think about it now. Firstly, empathy, I believe, has evolved into a new way of thinking, which I can best describe as do it with love. The reason I've evolved this is because Apple is no longer a product company. Apple is about delivering services bundled with products that ultimately result in experiences. And especially if you're in an Apple store, you're dealing with customer service, or the experience you have with the physical products, the software products, or what they enable you to do within this massive ecosphere that they've created. So whatever it is, I think in their heart, they're trying to do it with love, and in their brain intellectually, same thing. All right, the second, focus, has evolved also to this notion of make it simple. Another way of describing it is something Steve Jobs used to say a lot when we were considering a new product or a marketing program or software. He would say, it should be so simple, it just works. The user doesn't have to think. We've done the thinking and the work for them, so they just have to do, okay? Make it simple so that that's possible. And then impute, I think now the way Apple practices it is being iconic. And I'll go into this in greater detail today as we continue here. So how does Apple do it with love? So first, they keep it human. Yes, they're in the technology business. A lot of companies are in the technology business, but Apple planted this stake about making sure that they were living at the intersection of humanity and technology, actually leaning toward humanity in the execution of all this technology. So to today, they keep it human to make their products and what they do remarkable. Secondly, they use feedback for never-ending improvement. Now that they control their sales channel, whether it's online, through their stores, through product experiences and the interaction and the use they see of their products, they have a massive amount of data and feedback on what people like, what they don't like, what they do, what they don't do, to inform their decisions. But that doesn't mean they rely upon all that data to drive their decisions. When all's said and done, there's still a healthy distrust of data, and they still ask and look at what's in their hearts. How do they really feel about it? The last thing that makes them remarkable when it comes to this notion of doing it with love is that they appreciate their fans and they show it all the time. Whether it's in their stores or if you get involved and you join clubs, there is this massive worldwide community of Apple fans, and Apple supports them and acknowledges them and rewards them. Okay, so the second principle was make it simple, right? So how does Apple practice this? Well, in coming up with new products, services, or experiences, it starts in a very simple place. It starts with simple cures for big pain points that people have. As soon as they've identified one, then they take a look at understanding who craves it, who really needs it, who suffers the most from it. Once they think they have some solutions in mind, they analyze, okay, who can pay for it? At what dollar level? Can we produce it profitably? And then they focus on what's relevantly unique about it, or what's unique that Apple can bring to that product or service or that pain point that no one else has brought to it before. Lastly, after they've done all this, they ask themselves, what can we get rid of in this to make it a simple solution that's easier for people? Okay? And then lastly, being iconic. How does Apple practice this? By always thinking in terms of how they're going to visualize and verbalize what's human about the technology or the service or the solution that's being provided. They try to keep that as minimalistic as possible. They try to boil it down so that it's as simple as possible, but still memorable. Always needs to be memorable. They consider every factor in this equation. This begins with the original product or solution concept, the basic idea for it. Can it be super simple and iconic? To the naming of it, to the form that it takes, the look, the shapes, the colors, patterns, the interfaces for how you interact with it, as well as the marketing campaign that's used to launch and support it, all the way through the process of setting it up and putting it to work as a user. All of this is intended to be iconic, each in its own way. Okay? So, why does different always win? That was the title of this session, and I'd be remiss if I didn't break this down for you. Well, there are a number of good reasons, okay? Different prompts us to think. When we see a product or a service or a person or an advertisement, or we hear something that's different from the norm, it piques our interest, right? There's some mystery that's been created. We're curious about that. There's also some implication that, maybe it's better. Is it better? You know, we're skeptical, but we engage further if it seems relevant to us to find out if it is in fact better. So notice what's going on here. there's an awful lot of thinking going on. Suddenly this marketing or this product or this person has engaged us, and now they're making a very strong first impression that invites a longer engagement and potentially a relationship. So also, different makes something unique, makes it stand out. It can make it simpler too, to understand and to explain to yourself as well as to others. When we're trying to make a decision on whether to take an action, the first dialogue we have and the first sales job we have is with ourselves, right? This inner dialogue. But we also recognize that so many decisions we make are reflected on or judged by other people. So we've also got this other dialogue going on. It's like, how do I justify this to other people who might second guess my decision or my choices? So this is going on, and difference, being different, gets this all of this going. And it ultimately helps in the sales process for whoever the provider of that was. Okay, is this making sense? I hope so. So lastly, it makes you see all of the other alternatives differently. It transforms the way you view the marketplace of alternatives. So that's pretty powerful. And all we're talking about here is doing something differently and why it wins, right? All right, let's look into it a little further. So, oh, sorry, I should have clicked through some of these key points that I was making here. Okay,